The Adella Shores, built in 1894 in Gibraltar, Michigan, by the Wolverine Shipbuilding Company of Detroit, Michigan. The Adella was a wooden steamship. She had 2 masts and she had a fore and aft compound steam engine. She also had 2 cylinders and 1 boiler, which pushed her along with 1 propeller. The Adella had a length of 195 feet. She had a beam of 34 and a depth of 11. She also had a gross tonnage of 734 tons, and she could carry a net tonnage of 566 tons, which would come out to about a 950,000 lumber capacity for her carrying cargo. She was originally laid down for the Wolverine Barge Company, and she was built for the lumber trade. However, on July 25th of 1894, she would then be owned by the Shores Lumber Company of Ashland, Wisconsin. Mainly, though, she would be owned by the Samuel and Sidney O'Neff Company of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. She would be owned by the Sidney O'Neff estate from 1897 to about 1909, where, on January 21st, she would then be owned by E.M. Carleton, a trustee of Cleveland, Ohio. Another interesting fact about the Adella Shores, that in particular of her name, would be that she received her name from the Shores Lumber Company's owner's daughter, whose name was Adella. Her sister as well, Bessie, would christen the brand new Adella Shores. However, not with traditional champagne or wine, but with a bottle of water. The reason for this was that the family was very strict, to say, against alcohol consumption. The Adella Shores would have a very interesting career. In fact, she would end up sinking twice in 15 years in shallow waters, and each time she would be refloated and fitted again for service. All in all, the Adella Shores had a very good career, and she would transport not only lumber in the lumber trade across the Great Lakes, but she would also transport salt, and it would end up being the very last type of cargo that she would transport on May 1st of 1909. Now, on April 29th of 1909, the Adella Shores was making her way from Ludington, Michigan to Duluth, Minnesota. She was also, from some sources stating, carrying around 3,000 tons of salt in barrels aboard her. As the Adella was out, upbound, making her way to her destination, she wasn't alone. She was actually, in fact, following behind the much larger steel freighter, Daniel J. Morrell. Now, the Morrell was essentially carving a path through the ice on the lakes for the Adella to follow behind. Both of the ships would make their way to Sault Ste. Marie, and then out onto Lake Superior, where they would round and approach Whitefish Point. However, as some time passed, the Morrell was far past the Adella, and she was no longer in sight. Some estimates say it was around 2 miles behind the Morrell. As they were approaching Whitefish Point, a terrible, and horrendous northeast gale began to brew out on Lake Superior. It is at this point the mystery of the Adella Shores, where she would completely disappear on Lake Superior. And along with her, all 14 of her crew members would disappear with her as well. No bodies from the Adella Shores was ever found, and really there was only some debris that was ever found from her wreckage. Now, the captain of the Daniel J. Morrell at the time, a Captain Millen, thought that the Adella Shores may have actually struck a large ice floe while they were both out on Lake Superior. Again, the Adella Shores was a wooden steamship, very different compared to the steel freighter and the massive Daniel J. Morrell. Either way, was it a combination of both the storm, the ice, and the wind, or did her hull actually suffer a puncture in her hull, and that would cause her buildup and sinking? Now, unfortunately, that is about all the information I can find as to what may have caused the sinking of the Adella Shores. In my opinion, I too lean on the side of her hull being punctured by ice. But not only that, I do think because of the wind and waves and the snow blizzard that she was in, it may have also been because of ice buildup on her as well. How interesting as well that the Daniel J. Morrell would be the only and last ship to see the Adella Shores, let alone knowing what would become of her fate years later. Now, some last-minute information on the Adella Shores. Her captain was Captain Samuel Holmes of Milwaukee. He would be aboard her when she would disappear, along with his 14 crew members as well aboard her. Captain Holmes was said to have been an experienced mariner. Whether or not he was a hardy weather captain that pushed his ship out on the Great Lakes is up for debate. Either way, may Captain Holmes and his 14 crew members aboard the Adella Shores forever be at peace and rest. In 2021, the Great Lakes Shipwreck Historical Society and Director of Marine Operations, Daryl Ertl, and his brother Dan would actually come across the wreckage of the Adella Shores while they were using side-scan sonar technology. Daryl would go on to say, and I quote, "I pretty much knew that had to be the Adella Shores when I measured the length of it, because there were no other ships out there missing in that size range." End quote. Daryl would also go on to say that as soon as he put down his ROV camera to take a look at the wreckage, he could see the design of the ship and the name Adella Shores. The Adella Shores lies in roughly 650 feet of water out in Lake Superior, and she's about 40 miles northwest of Whitefish Point, Michigan as well. The vessel appears to be in great condition as she has been preserved at the bottom of Lake Superior for over 115 years since her sinking and loss out on the lake. And with that, I bring this video to a close with the story of the tragic sinking and disappearance of the Adella Shores on Lake Superior. Again, may all 14 of her crew members and her captain forever be remembered and rest in peace. I thank you everyone in joining me on today's episode of the Adella Shores. Man, what a small world, at least for the maritime history. Two iconic ships, the Daniel J. Morrell and the Adella Shores. I mean, the Morrell was a 603-foot long steel freighter, and that makes sense that she was ahead of the Adella Shores, plowing through, breaking the ice, kind of pushing it all through, kind of like a sloshy mixture. which is good for the Adella being a wooden ship. I doubt she could handle very much of that. So that must have been what seemed a good strategy at the time, and probably I had to have guessed what these ships did way back in the day. Smaller wooden steamships following behind the more modern, up-to-date steel bulk freighters, because then they would soon be gone altogether. But so yeah, I mean, they would eventually make their way to Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, and then pass through the locks, and then head out onto Lake Superior and go into Whitefish Bay and like it was saying, round Whitefish Point. But she slowly but surely disappeared behind the Morel. The Adella Shores did, and then yeah, then the captain couldn't see her anymore. But then every video I've done, every interviewer, person that comes on talks about how quickly this weather whips up, and the waves, the wind, the gales, the pounding of the ice, especially in that time when it's freezing out there. And I can only imagine that the vessel, they fought for their lives. It's kind of eerily similar to the Myron, but they at least had several other vessels try to aid and rescue her, and they could see what was going on with her. Not for the Adella Shores though. She probably put up a fight of her life, but yeah, ultimately lost. And then to just completely vanish, no bodies, very minimal wreckage. That must have meant I have to assume all the crew members went down with her when she was lost and disappeared. Quite tragic, quite terrible. But each and every story I capture will receive their bells or their songs, in a sense. And the Adella Shores was one that I was eventually going to get to, and I am very thankful and glad that I could bring her story. Not a very long, in-depth one, but I'm glad I could bring her story to you guys here today. And I thank you for joining me and listening to these people and their lives. And may their legacies always be held with highest honor and respect as I handle these stories as well and present them to you. But with that being said, everybody, please let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below. If you have any other additional information, spelling corrections, pronunciations, all that jazz, all good stuff, I always welcome it. I always look forward to new comments. I also want to thank all the new subscribers that have been joining lately. I have to believe that was because of my interview with History Mystery Man and Captain Don, Captain Daryl. I thank those guys so very much in doing a video with me, and I appreciate their time and everything with that. But yeah, thank you to all the new subscribers that have come onto the channel here, and welcome aboard. We've got a big year ahead of us and a lot of good stuff coming. So, but with that being said, I will bring this video now to an end, and thank you for joining me so very much. May God bless you, and may you have a great evening, night, morning, evening, whatever, afternoon, and look forward again to the next episode on Songs of the Great Lakes.